Good evening, Wakefield, and welcome to the school committee meeting on this Tuesday, March 9th, 2021. I'd like to call this meeting to order and note that a small group of us are in studio social distancing and that this meeting is being broadcast live on WCAT's Facebook page. I'd like to start the meeting off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is the reading of our mission statement. The vision of the Wakefield Public Schools is to graduate students who are confident, lifelong learners, who are respectful and caring members of their community. Our mission is to prepare students for college, career, and community by providing rich and challenging curriculum, high-quality instruction, and educational experiences that meet their individual needs and interests. Next on the agenda is the public comment. As of this evening at 5:30, I had not received any emails from anyone from the public who wanted to participate in the meeting. However, if there is anyone from the public who would like to participate in our meeting this evening, I would just ask that you identify yourself with your name and address. And I am not seeing any, so we will move on to the student advisory. It looks like we have this evening joining us Samantha and Sophia. Welcome, girls.
Hi.
How are you guys doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Good, thank you. I guess I'll just give you guys the floor. What's happening at the high school?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start first. So for academics, on Wednesday, March 24th, the high school is hosting in-school SATs for students to take. Administration and guidance are also working on the schedules for MCAS and AP testing in May, so hopefully they will be releasing those as soon as possible. And for athletics, fall 2 sports have, started and competitions and games are beginning to run. And I'll let Sophia take it from here.
Hi. Yeah, so for some other news, the high school has its first team competing for the WGBH High School Quiz Show. So we wanted to wish good luck to Alex Skeldon, Anthony Amatucci, Amelia Millstone, Nora Hagopian, and Peter Peachra. Last week, the WGBH hosted an audience filming, and this weekend the team will compete. So make sure to tune in for the wild card match of the Wakefield High School students versus the homeschoolers. The first match of this for the high school quiz show is April 3rd at 6 p.m. on the WGBH station. And on another note, picture makeups will be held March 16th for cohort A and March 19th for cohort B from 7:30 to 10:30. And if there are any students who'd like their picture taken, they can contact Mrs. Trafcante about that. And that's all the announcements we have for tonight.
That's great. Do either one of you participate in the fall 2 sports season?
Yes, I'm a part of the dance team.
Oh, excellent. So dance and cheer as well is part of the fall 2?
Yes, it is.
Oh, that's great. Excellent. I'm sure it's thrilling to be back.
It is.
Wonderful. Does anyone have any questions for our student advisors? Seeing none, well, thank you so much for the updates and for joining our meeting this evening.
Thank you.
We'll see you maybe in a couple of weeks. Thanks so much, girls. Okay, next on the agenda, consent agenda. Susie, thank you.
Move that the school committee approve the minutes of the January 26th, 2021 school committee meeting and accept the minutes of the February 19th, 2021 school committee policy and communications subcommittee meeting and the minutes of the February 25th, 2021 School Committee Finance and Facilities Subcommittee meeting as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none?
Amy?
Yes,
Amy, I
yes.
have one discussion point.
Yep.
On the January 26th meeting minutes, in section 7 and section 8, it's referred to as the mascot communication in both those sections. And I'm not sure that that's accurate, because the body of it talks about the name and the logo. So just, I know there's not confusion with that issue anyway. Just want to note that I'm guessing that mascot communication title for those sections probably should be changed.
Okay. Did you want to amend that, Mike?
Yeah, probably just to say Warrior logo and name. That's the way it's described in the body of those paragraphs, rather than mascot communication.
Okay.
Warrior name and logo communication.
Yeah, so do you want to make a motion to amend those? Is that how we do this, Tom?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion that we change section 7 and 8 titles of the January 26th school committee meeting to read Warrior name and logo communication rather than mascot communication, please.
Second.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Myself, yes. Ms. Bayer?
Yes.
Mr. Markham?
Yes.
Ms. Guida?
Yes.
Mr. Boudreau?
Yes.
Dr. Burns?
Yes.
Mr. Liakos?
Yes.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, budget items.
Great.
Christine, thank you.
So tonight we have the financial report through the month of February for 2021. As you'll see, the available balance for the end of February, there's a slight increase for this month due to we were able to do transfers to move a lot of the instructional supplies and textbooks and some of the special ed tuitions to the revolving accounts and to the grants. So we're starting, I can't believe it, the last quarter of the year. So we're doing reconciliation of purchase orders and transfers to make sure we spend down all the grants and reconcile these, my computer just died, and, and that was scary.
I usually print them all out too, and I didn't.
So yeah, so that's the local budget for February. Does anyone have any questions? Thanks.
Yeah.
Any questions for Christine?
Okay.
You all set? So consent agenda? Or sorry, budget item.
So after the report would be the payrolls for February,
Okay.
and that has motion.
Yep,
Yes.
move that the school committee approve
Thank
payroll
you.
warrants 32 and 34 as presented.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Myself, yes. Ms. Bayer?
Yes.
Mr. Markham?
Yes.
Ms. Guida?
Yes.
Mr. Boudreau?
Yes.
Dr. Burns?
Yes.
Mr. Liakos?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Can I back up, Amy, for just a quick second? Because anybody in the public doesn't have kind of that documentation that
Okay.
we're looking at. So right now, from a budget perspective, we are showing 7% under budget. right?
7%
7 point-
remaining.
Remaining to be spent.
Yes.
Yeah, so not
Yes.
under budget.
Yes.
Because you're planning on spending
Encumbered.
every part of that, right? So
dime, right.
accounted for,
Yes.
and so, which is okay, because a lot of that is encumbered expenses that are planned.
Expended and encumbered,
Yeah.
right? So encumbrances, we know all the salaries we're gonna need to spend from now until the end of the year, so we've encumbered all of that, all of the utilities, and now we're sort of analyzing all the accounts for the last quarter of the year to make sure we have everything we need. However, we're still adjusting as goes, because, there's been some
News.
and we'll see where we go from here. But yeah, there's our balance is $3.4 million with 7% remaining.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Under chair comments, I know that Superintendent Lyons has a list of important items that he would like to share with the school committee as well as the community. But before I yield my time to him, I just would like to take this moment to offer my condolences to the family of Dr. John Sardella. He passed away on January 26th. He was the principal of the of the Wakefield Junior High School at the time, and also later became the assistant superintendent in Wakefield. He also served as chairman of the then Board of Selectmen and was also a U.S. Army veteran. Dr. Sardella just happened to also be my neighbor. And, one interesting fact about John was that he was so active, and I can appreciate this. For 20 years, he enjoyed his daily walk of 7 miles between Wakefield and Linfield. And over the years, I do fondly remember seeing him walking through the streets, and I always knew it was him because he always had a very special walking stick that he used. So my sincere condolences to his lovely wife, Shirley, of 67 years, and their 4 sons. So thank you for your service, Dr. Sardella, and may you rest in peace. Thank you. Superintendent Lyons.
Yes, before I start, I would also like to say to the Sardella family, we're kind of wishing or sending our deepest condolences from the administration and all faculty and staff. So we will be keeping the Sardella family certainly in our thoughts and our prayers as we move forward. And so we're thinking of you. So, and kind of shifting to comments and updates. So my remarks tonight about comments and updates are going to be brief because we have our budget proposal, our FY22 budget proposal. We're going to share some time and give Tom Bankert an opportunity to talk about extracurricular activities. And then we're going to close by talking about student learning time, which has been a hot topic today and in the last week or so. So just starting off with just comments and updates, I would like to just share in regard to our COVID numbers. It looks at this point that we have 12 new positive COVID cases, so students in isolation. We are also looking at 66 students in quarantine right now. So these numbers are kind of a good reference for us, and it's a reminder. They're a telltale to let us know that our mitigation strategies are certainly working, but it's also a telltale to let us know that COVID is still present and with us, and we need to kind of remain vigilant because as numbers are trending down in the state, our weekly positive cases, student cases in quarantine, and positive cases in the schools are hovering around 12 to 16 positive cases, which is still high for a district our size. Our working theory a few weeks ago, we had saw an uptick at predominantly the high school level, and we thought that the week after that we would continue to see cases at the secondary level, but we got more of an even distribution among elementary, middle, and high, which again, in talking with our Board of Health, is just letting us know that we need to pay attention and continue to be vigilant with our safety and mitigation strategies. So that's where we're at there. Over the past 2 weeks, we continue to test faculty and staff on Sunday mornings. Last week, we tested 75 faculty and staff with 1 positive case. This past week, we tested 50 faculty and staff with no positive cases. So that's positive. Not to overuse the word positive, but that's very it's a good thing. So that's an update around COVID. I do want to let the community know that we received notice that just an update on MCAS testing. MCAS has been scaled back in the number of tests that are going to be administered this year. And in grades 3-5, the new tentative dates have been moved out to May 10th to June 11th. And the grades 6, 7, and 8 tests, those dates have yet to be announced. And so I'm sure that your principals will be sending an update to you as soon as we know more. And so several parents have reached out and asked what's going on with MCAS. And so I do think that they're trying to get it as close to the end of the year as possible, in the hope that more students will be in school and be able to participate in the assessment. There's also a very active conversation happening as to whether it's really a worthwhile assessment and a snapshot of student learning when we have so many students in so many different plans. So there's an active conversation about the possibility of moving it to the fall, or some districts are talking about even not participating at all. So we will keep you up to date on MCAS as we learn more, but that information came out this past Friday. So that's where we are with updates. At this point, I would like to turn it over to Christine to start our presentation on the FY22 budget. But before I do, I'd love to give an opportunity to the committee to answer or ask any questions that you may have in regard to the information that we just shared. Colleen?
Yeah, thank you, Doug. I just had a question on, so when is the latest that we would know the decision on the MCAS? So if they're not going to be scheduled for, May 10th, that seems to be the first date that's on there, and districts can make their decisions to either postpone or not have the assessment at all. When do you think the latest would be on that?
Well, I think, districts are going to be taking the lead of the state. And so, things are changing week to week at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed. So I'd like to say that we should hear in the next 4 weeks what the plan will be from the department, because I know that they need to make commitments and we need to get schedules in place to be able to make accommodations for all of our students as well. So our working theory is that we're going to hear and be able to nail those dates down in the next 4 weeks.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're certainly welcome.
I can't see Tom.
He may be on another screen.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I'd love to turn it over to Christine to start our presentation on the FY22 proposed budget to school committee.
Good evening, everyone. So tonight, this is the proposed school department budget. It will be posted tomorrow morning on the Wakefield Public Schools website. If anyone wants to come into the office and pick up a copy, we'll have some available at central office as well. And afterwards, we're going to have a public hearing for families, faculty, staff, anyone who wants to make comments on the budget presented tonight. That will be on March 18th, next Thursday at 6 o'clock via Zoom. And that link will also be on the website. So the second slide talks about the budget goals for fiscal 22. I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. It's just an overview of talking to maintaining our safe teaching and learning opportunities for all students and staff as we adjust to the changes that we made due to COVID-19. This budget will fund faculty and staff of 578 adults and 7 bargaining units to educate approximately 3,393 students in grades pre-K to 12 and post-academy. It's driven by the instructional strategies and the Wakefield Public Schools core values. It's fiscally responsive and sustainable while acknowledging the changing demands of COVID-19. So I'm gonna look up there. Again, the objectives for fiscal 22 are to address learning loss at all grade levels. This budget also includes the 5 FTEs, which were removed from last year's budget. After the school committee voted on the budget, 5 FTEs were removed because the budget was reduced. This will continue to replenish PPE supplies and materials without the one-time COVID grants in fiscal 22. We're going to continue preventative maintenance on buildings in conjunction with DPW to maintain the improvements to our buildings. Hopefully to retain the 3 additional FTEs for cleaning and nursing services and retain remote teaching positions. This budget also supports special ed out-of-district costs and services. This budget will also address achievement, equity, and opportunity gaps, recruiting, retaining, and developing outstanding teachers, administrators, and paraeducators. We are developing a facilities master plan, including a new high school, a renovated Greenwood school with attention to new developments and a new enrollment. Developing a comprehensive plan for special ed and English learner support. We're going to hope to increase course offerings in STEAM, computer science at all levels, and early college opportunities. Safety and required COVID-19 protocols are always addressed in this budget. So Doug and I like to call this the money slide. This is a comparison of where we are now in fiscal 21 of a budget of $43 million to fiscal 22, which our proposed budget is $45,703,200. It's broken down by the three large categories of personnel, which you can see is well over 80% of this budget, contractual services, which includes all things transportation, professional development, everything that we have to hire someone to come in and do a service, that falls under contractual services. And then supplies and materials, textbooks, paper, photocopiers, postage, all things like that fall under supplies and materials. So our total budget has an increase of $2,126,541 over fiscal 21, and that equals a 4.88%. We've been so fortunate in Wakefield for this fiscal 21 to have one-time COVID grants. We received 7 of them, as you can see on this list. ESSER 1, we received a grant about the water bubblers, CVRF, which was the large one for COVID relief. That was basically to open schools. We were never going to be able to fix the facilities, fix the screens, the air purifiers without this COVID-related grant. We also got a small one for school lunch because we had to buy materials for grab and go for the hybrid models. We also were so fortunate to receive the remote learning technology grant. I still talk about that because it was competitive. We applied for it and we got it. $66,000 for remote services for Chromebooks, laptops, cameras, etc. ESSER 2, we just were notified about this past month. That's coming in. We can either use it this year or carry it forward to next year, as well as the State Coronavirus Prevention Fund, which is coming in 2 installments. Half of that 124 is coming this month, half is coming in April, and then has to be spent by June. So for a total for one-time COVID grants of $1,451,792.
Can I I'd just like to add, I just want to make the public aware, and certainly the school committee aware, that in regard to grants and applying for grants, we've collaborated with our town emergency manager, Tom Walsh, and Steve Mayo, the town leadership, and our facilities director, Bob Shirley. So we're applying for any and every grant that we think we can qualify for. And whether we get it or whether we don't, we are certainly trying to go after any available dollars that we can. So I think it's just important to note.
I'm
So
sorry, can I ask a question about the previous slide? So the ESSER 2, you said we just got alerted to, so because what is difficult with me on this slide is you said some of it could be used for next year, or it could be used for this year, right? So it's
so the only one that could carry forward for next year is ESSER 2.
Okay.
All
So
the others
376
must be spent.
And we haven't accounted for any of that money in this budget that we're looking at.
So
for
ESSER 2, we're addressing that about whether or not we need to address it in 21 or 22. But we will make a proposal about whether or not we will need the 4.88 if we do for the 11 positions, but if we need to address for COVID-related positions, if we have to use any federal money, which is the ESSER 2 money.
As we go through the
Right.
proposal, I think it
right.
will become clear.
Okay. And one other comment to WCAT, I just got a ping that the slides are very blurry. I don't know if there's anything that can be done about that, but it's very difficult for some folks to see it on, I think, on the Zoom. So I'm just gonna put that out there. I don't know if they can fix it or not. Back to it, sorry.
Oh, I think Mike is
They'll also be
talking.
available on
Oh,
the website in the morning.
Mike is talking. We can't hear him.
We can't hear you, Mike.
Nope.
No, we can't hear you.
Oh,
yet.
Colleen can.
Can you hear
Colleen?
us?
Okay, Dawn just gave the thumbs up that maybe it's clearer. I think Mike just gave up. Oh, he's texting you, okay.
Here we go.
There
Okay,
he
Mike,
is.
I can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you, yes.
Oh, good. So they never fixed that. Oh, core. So, all right. I forgot what I said. It'll come back to me in a minute. Colleen, do you remember what I said?
I think, Mike, you were just pointing out that it's hard for viewers to see the budget because it's
Thank
only
you.
a partial screen.
It's only a small block. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by 5 with all the 25 blocks. It only shows up as a small block on it. That's probably part of the
Did
issue.
you change your view to speaker?
Maybe that's.
And that will help increase so that you're gonna get.
Thank you. Thanks. Perfect. That's me. User error. Sorry.
Okay. So we were so fortunate to receive the one-time COVID grants for $1.4 million, but as you can see, we also incurred COVID-related costs for fiscal '21 to the tune of $1.7 million. And there's a breakdown here on the slide about PPE, facility updates, building maintenance and supplies. We had the Bala report, which everyone remembers, screens for the high school, air purifiers, filters for HVAC systems, and the storage containers so we could socially distance. We had to move furniture out at all the schools. We had remote learning. We've hired 16 remote positions for this fiscal year to the tune of almost $800,000 to support our almost 400 students who are now in fully remote classes. We've had 2 additional custodians and 1 additional nurse for COVID tracing. We've had COVID testing, as Doug was talking about earlier, every Sunday for 2 months. That's $56,000. Our technology resources to date have been about $310,000, and our daily health attestation app is about $6,000. So all of that was one-time COVID-related costs for about $1.7 million. I'll just pause for a minute after that. And then this budget really addresses what is known and what is unknown. We have, for this budget, listed what we know to date, right? We know we need to address learning loss at all grade levels due to the pandemic. We know we need extended day intervention services. We know we need to continue technology supports are critical to maintain our initial investments. Health and safety, direct instruction, intervention, remote services, and counseling are now top priorities. PPE with modified workspaces. Everyone's seen the plexiglass at every school, at the main office. Cleaning routines, we're gonna continue to be required. Some of the unknowns, which I think this list is growing, access to COVID vaccines for all staff, enrollment trends, potential loss of students to private schools, shortage of teachers. I think we've all heard about how hard it is to get substitutes and paraeducators. The need to continue remote services that might impact class size and schedules. Those are just some of what the unknowns that we've tried to address in this budget. We're trying to prepare for what we know and what we don't know, and we know it's evolving almost on a daily basis.
So I think I can pick it up here as well. And so this idea of knowns and unknowns, we've talked about and we've used this language for the last number of years. You know, we've agreed with FinCom and with, you know, the leadership here in town that we would build a budget for what is known at this point in time. And so that's what this budget does. And so, we often get asked the question, do we build a budget, with kind of money in the budget for just in case scenarios? And the answer is we do not, right? We budget for what we believe we are going to need at this moment in time and what we believe we're going to need moving forward. One of the big questions that we've gotten is, do we think we'll be able to come back full time in the fall? And the answer is yes. That's what we're planning for. We're planning for a full return, and this budget supports a full return in the fall. And so there are remote positions in this budget, but it's a fraction of the number of remote positions that we currently have. The reason for that is because the Commissioner of Education has said that next year that a choice for parents to continue remote would be discontinued. However, if a student had a medical need, then remote services should be able to be accessed. Again, if a student has a medical note indicating that they need to be supported remotely. And so that is one of the primary reasons why you see a fraction of the remote positions in this current budget as it's presented. So as part of our budget process annually, for the last 3 years, what we've done is we've surveyed parents and teachers. Our first survey comes in the fall, late fall, November, December, and that survey comes from our Student Services Subcommittee. The Student Services Subcommittee has been a real kind of check and balance for us, and it has helped us articulate our budget, and really it has provided us an opportunity to check our thinking about the programs that we're developing and about what students need. For example, last year we really focused on transitions as to students as to when they transition from grade 4 to 5 to the middle school, and also from 8 to 9. This year, the focus of our Student Services Subcommittee budget, we looked at 4 areas. We looked at remote instruction, we looked at technology in terms of what was available to students and families and what they needed. We also looked at social emotional learning needs, and we looked at special education. And so as a check and balance, you'll see throughout these slides, I'll make reference to the Student Services Subcommittee information, but we didn't want to kind of inundate you with data slides. So they're going to be talking points. I have that information. If anyone has any questions, I can certainly reference it and get you any data that you might be interested in hearing about. What was very powerful and helpful to us is that in the Student Services Subcommittee survey, we had about 100 faculty participate, but we did have 1,236 families, parents participate in the survey. So that is kind of a factor of about 3 or 4 times the normal survey participation that we normally have. So we feel like it's really a great, again, check and balance to the additional survey, the budget survey that we presented and that we're going to be sharing tonight. So as part of our presentation for the past number of years, we have sent out a budget survey and allowed faculty, staff, and parents to kind of give us their priorities, what you think is most important. And this year's budget survey, we focused on and we aligned it to our instructional strategy, which aligns to quality teaching, rigorous curriculum, individualized student service, district personnel, and facilities and operation. And so we've asked parents and teachers to list their top 2 priorities in each area. And so the slide that you see up right now is a summary of those top 2 priorities. For example, you'll see under quality teaching that the top 2 priorities are math and ELA intervention services and special education services. So I don't know if you'd like to add anything at this point, Kara?
Sure. Do you want me to jump to the next slide?
Sure.
You just go. So again, the next couple of slides just break down the survey data by category. And as Doug just mentioned, the top two under this category that were priorities for staff and families were math and ELA intervention services, and then special education services. So I think it really speaks to what we're seeing across the board for more direct teaching, more explicit instruction to be delivered to our students. At our elementary level, we did prioritize reading, writing, and math as the core academic subject areas, which are allowing us to have our teachers collaborate grade level to grade level on what the priority skills and standards should be for this year, to so all can keep pace, and also to help us progress monitor our students. So we've been able to launch a spring intervention program after school for our students that started last week, and we're hoping to continue that work into, we're planning to continue that work into the summer as well, and then into the fall. And I think the special education piece, I think that really speaks for itself, just continuing to prioritize direct services to our students, to provide specially designed instruction based on our students' disability areas and their needs. So I think that continues to be a top priority. And I can go to the next slide as well, focused on rigorous curriculum. The top two categories that were prioritized were math curriculum review materials, and then our social emotional health and learning. So as we've presented before to the committee, we're underway in a math curriculum review process right now, which has been just an incredibly thorough process led by our math curriculum coordinator, Lindsay Mosca, at the secondary level, and our elementary STEM curriculum coordinator, Valerie Drynan. They've got a widespread group that represents all levels and subject areas working together since last year to really think about what we want math education to look like for our students in Wakefield. They're now in the process where the group has decided on which curriculum resources to field test, which some of our teachers have volunteered to do starting very soon. So we'll have a better sense of those high quality instructional materials by the end of this year. And then I think the social emotional health and learning piece, that I don't think it was surprising to us. I think, like Doug mentioned earlier, a lot of the budget survey results connected really nicely with the student services subcommittee's survey. And I think they just really support the needs that we're seeing across the board. Social emotional well-being of our students is really a top priority right now, especially this year, given the different schedules, the pandemic, the different circumstances at home. So we really feel a need to prioritize getting our students what they need. And oftentimes that connects to high quality resources and to put in the hands of our staff as to how to best approach our students and to guide them and work with them. So I think, I won't go on, but I think, sorry, I always go longer than I need to, but we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, so I think I'd like to add, Kara mentioned the support that we've gotten from Lindsay Mosca, our math curriculum coordinator, as well as Val Drynan. And one of the things that we were able to do in the Student Services Subcommittee is to disaggregate the data by level. So for example, what are the elementary priorities? What are the middle school priorities? What are the high school priorities? And when we did that, and when we correlated that data to these priorities, they track one for one, right? So the social emotional needs of students were highlighted in all three areas. The special education needs were highlighted in all three areas. And so it's kind of a check and balance for us. It lets us know that we are certainly dedicating our resources and prioritizing our resources in a way that we feel like, we have confirmation that this is absolutely a priority for us at all levels. So in terms of individualized student learning, this category focuses on individually what do students need. And you'll see here that the top bar graph direct intervention services, direct academic support, again, tracks very well with the priorities that came from the Student Services Subcommittee. And we really feel like that this is going to be an area that we're going to need to look at creatively, not only in terms of a resource management perspective, but also creatively in terms of time. You heard Kara describe the ELA, or the reading intervention services that we're providing elementary students, that's happening outside of the school day. We are starting to think as a leadership group, how can we get students what they need? What can we do during the school day? What can we do outside of the school day? And we're also starting to think not only just kind of vertically in regard to the school day, but we're also starting to think in regard to the calendar year. We're starting to plan for the summer services that we might be able to provide, as well as intervention and services that we would provide for the next school year. We're taking a kind of a long view on the need to provide this type of service as a year-over-year commitment. Our working theory in regard to learning loss and trying to provide students what they need, we feel really strongly that this is an 18 to 36 month commitment of resources that we need to make, right? And we are thinking creatively and thoughtfully how we're going to kind of resource these commitments. We are going to apply for grants. We do know that there's more kind of money earmarked for this type of work coming from the federal government and the state, but there'll be more information to follow on that. In terms of district personnel, this category lists positions at the district level that would help us coordinate and refine our systems just to provide better collaboration, better work, and better communication of the work that we are doing. And it's interesting, the first priority here is a digital learning coach, digital learning specialist. This has become kind of a very popular position in a number of surrounding districts. They've hired kind of digital learning specialists at the district level to help schools and help teachers. We feel like we can, at this point, we feel like we can support teachers with our library media specialists and with personnel in the building instead of dedicating a full position to this, right? And one of the reasons we believe that this is so high is, or there's such a strong response here, is because of the significant remote learning that has been in place, not only for students that are in the full remote, but also for students that are in synchronous and asynchronous times, right? And so the other piece here is you'll see for priorities are a director of counseling services. We're thinking that counseling services and the coordination of counseling services at a district level is something that we're really going to need to look at. We're not at the point where we feel like we need to dedicate one full-time equivalent to this position just yet, or to counseling just yet. I think we're going to work collaboratively with the administrative teams and with the WA leaders to think about how we might be able to fund this possibly as a stipend or fund it creatively so that it wouldn't come out of the budget. And you'll see that the third priority is kind of our nursing COVID lead. So we were able to add a nursing position this year due to COVID, who's really been instrumental in kind of supporting the current nurses that we have in place. Our nursing staff has been remarkable. They, by and large, have been the reason that we have been able to effectively contact trace and understand where the transmission of the virus is coming from, which has allowed us to kind of open school and really make decisions that has kind of kept us in person teaching and learning. So in regard to facilities and operations, this is our last budget category that we collect data on. And so this category lists positions that also connect to COVID, as well as the new student management system. And the two priorities listed in this category are overwhelmingly, which was a surprise. I would not have predicted this. I don't think any of us would have predicted this. But I think that there's a desire to really have an opportunity to have a more effective student data information system where it correlates IEPs, 504s, student grades, parent communication, adult communication. And so we're looking at that and thinking creatively how we might be able to kind of to get that resource, but it might be an FY23 commitment for us. And the other piece that kind of came in as a resounding, really a first, and because there's just a slight difference between the student information system, is the classroom cameras and sound systems for remote synchronous instruction that would allow students to zoom into classes if we had the technology available. And so that's something that we're looking at. It's not something that's going to be a K-12 build. We would prioritize the high school first, and then we would go from there. We're looking at modular systems and trying to figure out how we can do this in the most cost-effective way. And we say modular systems because we are also thinking very positively about MSBA and the high school project and us getting a new high school. So we don't want to invest money in the infrastructure of the school and kind of hardwire and mount things that we might not be able to get out of the building or move with us to a new building. And so our budget.
Can I have just a quick question on that?
Of course.
Is the thinking on that equipment to support next fall's students that potentially would be remote by choice, like you said, that would have medical kind of documentation that said that they needed to be remote, plus kind of in anticipation of COVID potentially coming back in to some degree in the fall and the winter and needing to have kids quarantine and that it would just be, instead of kind of a remote versus in-person model, if kids needed to be out, there would be this opportunity to zoom in. Is that the thinking as to why we would make that kind of investment?
So I think, having it just be at the high school level, we're anticipating that if COVID is going to stay with us, we think it's going to be at the secondary level. And so that's why we're thinking of prioritizing secondary. And so that's just a very quick snapshot. In terms of quarantining and how we might manage those things, we don't know what that's going to be like in the fall. So we haven't so you're a few chess moves ahead of us, but I think we're pretty much in the same relative space in regard to prioritizing resources.
Yeah, I think I'm asking the question because I think in some people's minds, you might say, well, do we even need that, right? If the fall looks relatively normal and everybody's vaccinated and nobody's getting sick, would we spend money on that? So I'm just trying to understand what the thinking would be if we were to spend the money, and doing it modularly would help us, allow us to kind of move it around as kind of needed, right?
Yeah, if the question is, do we have a budget to have modular systems in every classroom? We know that we won't. Right? Do we have, will we have an opportunity to have modular systems that could be moved class to class? I think we will.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to think about it in the most cost-effective way possible, and also in the most positive public health way possible, thinking we're going to be back and we're not going to need to quarantine like we did this past year.
Sure.
But it's a great point, and it's something that we need to kind of keep in the back of our minds.
And I think just to add to that, instructionally, we just talked so much about, zooming students in and which level of students can get the most out of that. And I think, we've definitely narrowed down that the secondary students have the developmental capability to get the most from that. And, the guidance that came out today did talk about, potentially live streaming students next year who might need to quarantine, and just thinking about that as well. But I think that can prove challenging at the elementary level, but I think we've seen it successful at secondary.
Yep. Some of our teachers have been remarkable in this space. And very creative, but there'll be more information to follow. So our proposal for FY22 we are proposing the reinstatement of the 5 positions that were cut last year, that were part of the accepted budget at the school committee. Interestingly, school committee accepted our budget last year, just before we closed, right, for 61 school days for the second half of the school year last year. So it's just about a year ago that we proposed our budget and that it was accepted. But the town had asked us to cut $400,000 out of the budget, and we did. And to do that, we did not fill positions that we had agreed to with the WEA as part of our negotiations. And so this is actually year 2 of a commitment that we have made to WEA to bring on. So if we kind of back up the clock, last year we had agreed that we would hire 2 science positions and have 3 special education positions as part of the budget. The kind of the second part of that commitment is that we would hire another 2 science positions in this budget. So what we're doing is we're pushing both of those out a year. We're going back to our initial commitment that we had made in FY21. We're trying to fulfill that commitment in FY22, and the FY22 commitment for the 2 additional positions, we're moving to FY23. I don't know if that makes sense or if anyone has any questions about that. I just think it's important to note, because you're going to see positions and references in the FY23 budget and as we move forward. And I just want to try to communicate as clearly and effectively as we can. So this budget is to reinstate the 5 positions that were proposed last year. 2 of those positions, the term FTE means full-time equivalent, right? And so it doesn't always equal a person. So we can have a half-time position that can be 1 person, right? And so if you have questions about that, please let us know. But we're looking at 5 FTE in this budget, and we're also looking at 6 COVID-related positions that would be a carryover from this year that we think are going to be a vital part of us opening and continuing to provide effective services and effective clean schools for our students and for our faculty and staff. And so we'll talk more about these positions and breaking them out, because in the proposal that we're making, the 6 COVID-related positions on the bottom half of this slide, we are going to propose that we fill those positions for a 1-year time limit, and to also fund those positions. Our intent would be to try to offset the cost of those 6 positions through federal grants. So more to follow as we go through this.
Hey, Doug?
Yes, sir.
Could I ask a question?
Of course.
It's on those COVID positions, because I think it's a very good budget. Those are the ones that are obviously a little up in the air depending on how things progress in that regard. But particularly as we look at the 3 remote teachers, the question for you, before COVID hit, did we have any students receiving any sort of remote teaching at all?
We had students receiving home tutoring. So it was a form of remote service, but they were in often extreme cases. It wasn't as kind of mainstream as it is now, Michael.
So you talked about 1 year, and this is the point of my question. Is part of the rationale for having the 3 remote teachers that, number one, first of all, we have the state's permission, assuming it meets certain qualifications. We actually have the ability to do it. Obviously, we've demonstrated that over the past year in that regard. And third, and probably most importantly, are there children who previous to COVID would have really done much better if we had a remote learning environment, and now we do, and shame on us if we don't allow them to thrive through that type of a process? Is that fair?
I think it's more than fair. And when we meet as administrative groups, one of the things that we've talked about are the kind of the positives that have come from the pandemic. You know, one of the positives is this idea that we've learned that some students have absolutely thrived in remote settings, whereas some other students have just come apart during remote time, right? And so, so you're spot on. We do know that there will be students next year that will meet the medical criteria and get the documentation to receive these services. So it's the type of thing, Michael, when if you build it and students come and they are very successful, it's kind of a hard case to say we should discontinue or stop what's really working positively for students. It's not a large number of students, it's a small percentage. But again, the commissioner next year, Commissioner Riley, is trying to create greater checks and balances so that it's not a simple parent choice, but there would need to be documentation. But your instinct and your question, I think, is spot on. Right? If we have students that are thriving in that space that can get the documentation they need it, we should be thoughtful in really considering how we provide it. So we're also, a question that also will come up, I'm anticipating, is why 3 positions and not 5? Or why 3 and not 8? Or why 3 and not 16, which is what we currently have? Because we are anticipating, with the greater kind of need to provide documentation and more checks and balances, we're anticipating that our numbers in that space are going to go down. And so that's why we're working with the number 3.
Yeah, I just think, say it's a 1-year thing, we might be shortcutting ourselves, so something for us to keep open for the future.
Yeah, there are many things that are going to stay with us after COVID is over, right? And so we have a running list right now, and we can get to them maybe in another meeting. But in kind of getting back to our slides, so the 6 positions, 2 custodial positions, our 1 COVID nurse, and our 3 remote teaching positions, our working kind of budget, the cost for those positions is $360,785. And again, we would seek to fund these positions through federal grants as an offset to our budget. A snapshot of the total FY22 recommended budget. Again, the number, like Christine says, this is the money slide. Our proposal this evening, we are proposing a budget for FY22 of $45,703,200. It's an increase of 4.88% over FY21, and according to the governor's preliminary budget, we've included some Chapter 70 money, which we are anticipating an increase of $101,000, which we feel like is just really a small increase. We welcome any increase, but this is kind of a much smaller increase than we feel like we need, and we are working with our legislators to really continue to kind of work on Chapter 70 and kind of a more equitable increase for Wakefield. So special education, the other thing that we're learning and I think we could have anticipated is that with our time out of school last spring, 61 school days, and in the modified schedules that we've been in, there's been an uptick in requests for special education services, for special education evaluations, both in regard to services, that is services in school during the school day, as well as services outside of the school day, and services for remote students as well. So we're providing service now differently than we ever have in the past. So we're anticipating that that's only going to grow right now, right? And so one of the things that has been highlighted in our student services subcommittee meetings is really our need to really do it. If we are more effective in providing intervention services and also providing tiered supports in terms of academic and social emotional supports, the kind of the working theory is that our number of referrals, if we are really effective in those areas, would decrease. And so that's something that you're going to hear more about, not only in this budget, but also in the coming year.
Doug, can you clarify what you mean by referrals? Is that referrals inside the district coming from teachers saying, I think the student needs support, or referrals from outside, or are you talking about us making referrals to out of district placements?
Yeah. Susie's question was, can I please clarify how I'm using the word referrals? Is that referrals that are coming for special education services? Is it coming from teachers? Is it coming from us? Or is it internally? Or is it coming from the external, from outside of schools? And the answer to the question is both, right? Both, right? And so I think what we're seeing and kind of hearing from parents and families, that they're really concerned with learning loss, really concerned what it means. And often parents that, we need to strengthen our kind of our benchmarking and our data collection to kind of let parents know where their children stand and where they're progressing, how they're progressing. And so I think the more effective we are in that space, the more our numbers are going to kind of settle out a little bit. But we have a lot of work to do in intervention services, in tiered supports, as well as special education in all three areas. But to answer your question specifically, are they coming from internal and external? The answer is yes, both.
Okay, thanks.
So we're looking at extended year and extended day services. You've already heard about this. We're discussing and developing trauma-sensitive practices, additional services and assessments and programming that will be needed for our students in 21-22. And we're also looking at professional development offerings that will focus on intervention and remote services and teaching to meet the emerging needs of students. And so I love this picture, and I talked a little bit about this. I've talked about this in the past. This is our marching band, and this is pre-COVID. And, our marching band is an award-winning band. And I'm not just saying this because Tom Bankert's on the call with us, and he's the architect of these wins and these championships. But the reason I'm bringing it up because, Tom will tell you, he doesn't like to draw much attention to himself in this area, but he's fiercely competitive, as I think we all are. And I think one of the things that we've learned is that, to build a very competitive program, it takes a commitment over time. And this is really what this slide is all about, is taking the long view, looking through COVID, taking the good that we have learned and that we can take away from COVID while leaving the rest behind, developing innovative practices that are going to make Wakefield the most competitive school system that it can be, right? And so we're talking about collaborating with town leaders to continue this plan, right? This can't be done in isolation. We're looking at continuing to provide learning safe and learning ready facilities. Bob Shiroli's not here with us tonight, but Bob Shiroli is also, from a facilities and operations perspective, also very competitive himself. He is committed to the work and the improvements that we've made to all of our buildings, and he does not want to back off just one bit. His relationship with DPW and Joe Conway is exceptional, and DPW has been an amazing partner for Bob. And so they are two young emerging leaders in our town that are really going to continue to kind of help us with our facilities. But we're also working actively on the eligibility phase. We're in phase 2 of the MSBA track to continue on our calendar to get a new high school. And this is something that we're particularly excited to get, right? And so there'll be more information to follow here. So that's it for our proposal. I know it's concise. We're open to any questions anyone may have. If you are watching from home, we've included our email addresses on here if you have questions for us.
Yeah, could I ask a question? Not really a question, a little bit more of a comment.
Yes.
So as I looked at the whole overall budget, it's I'll use round numbers. It's a 4.9% increase over last year.
Mm-hmm.
Of that, 4.6 is personnel related expenses. So it's all about people at the end of the day. Everything else is very small numbers. Of that 4.6 personnel, 3% is contractual. We don't have any option on that. We have to spend that. It's all already in the contracts. And then we have 1.6, the remaining 1.6 is new hires. 5 are hires we're bringing back that were taken out last year, and 6 are related to COVID. So at the end of the day, any sort of debate really is centered around the personnel and really the hires, and whether we're okay with the 5 new hires or hires we had before we're putting back in, and the 6 people for COVID. And hopefully you get a grant for the COVID. We don't know that. I don't know how certain that is, but to me, those are kind of the big high points. I think it's a very responsible budget, but those are really the areas of focus for, I think, conversation about if there's any questions. Just my 2 cents.
I appreciate that, Michael. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank Greg. Greg, yep.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Amy. Yeah, just to pick up on Mike's point, I agree. Really, so much of it is, so much of this is driven by personnel costs and contractual costs. Every year, that's true. And this year, there are just the added complications of transitioning, we hope, out of a COVID environment. I had a couple of questions. We use the term intervention services a lot. I think I understand what that means and how that's distinguished from a normal educational service. But Kara, can you define intervention services just for the public, and also define how the survey respondents understand that when they prioritize that?
Sure. So I can start first with describing how we're looking at that right now. And again, as Doug mentioned, we're looking at our elementary level, although the budget survey spans K through 8. We've been working together for the past couple of months, just, all year really, just trying to, again, prioritize at each grade level what is being taught in general education. All the while, we still have students in special education. We still have students working with our reading specialists, our counselors. So when Doug had talked about the work that we need to do with our tiered system of supports, we're finding that we need to just dig a little bit more in terms of who we're identifying would benefit from those services. And the way that we're thinking about it right now, and the way we designed the spring literacy intervention program for after school, was we were looking at our students who we're not certain whether, why there is the skill gaps, but we're finding that they're kind of ranging right below where we want to see them in terms of grade level expectations at different points in the year. And the information we got around students who we invited for the after school intervention programs were brought to us by our building-based data meetings. And they weren't necessarily students who we would describe as struggling or behind, but we felt like that there was, maybe due to the lack of exposure to aspects of the curriculum in the spring, that they might benefit from a boost. And so when we think about the intervention services that are in play right now, we targeted specific skill areas that we felt like these students could use a boost, whether it was word accuracy, fluency, comprehension, really zoning in on early reading skills. And then what we're moving to work towards is trying to progress monitor those students who are in that after school program, and to see how they progress, and that there may be a chance that boost was enough, they're in a good spot, move on back to general ed, maybe identify some new students, or benefit from a second round or some summer services. And then, again, continuing to progress monitor, maybe they need more, because that would be when we would look to see how we're using our reading specialist support as another layer of what we call, more within our general ed bucket of services that we can offer to students. And then I think we really want to get to that point where we have seen a spike in special education referrals this year, which, isn't really surprising. I think, we talk to parents, we talk to teachers, everyone's anxious, but we really want to make sure that our referrals to special ed are accurate, and that we really feel like we've exhausted everything that we have within our general education program before referring to special ed, which to qualify, you need to have an area of disability, not be making effective progress, and then need something different in the form of specialized instruction. So I think our tiered system is something that we're looking to continue to refine. But when we talk about intervention right now, we're talking about really more of what we think might be exposure gaps, or kids that maybe didn't get the time they needed, not necessarily struggling.
Yeah,
Does that clarify?
Yeah, very much. Thank you. And so then to turn from, just a couple more questions and then one comment. So to turn from the short term to the long term, I saw a reference to a long-term special education plan. Could you just elaborate a little bit on that? I know we're going to be hiring a new director of special education. We're focusing on this as an area of concern and the need for improvement. Where does a plan fit into that overall approach? And is this the first time we've ever facilitated a long-term special education plan?
So, I think I can start, and I'm sure Kara will chime in. What we're talking about is, more continuity in our programming. What we've done in the past few years is our teachers have worked double time, and we've kind of been reactive as opposed to proactive. So for example, Greg, intervention services is a proactive step that we are initiating, where we are inviting students to get a little bit more, right? Just to help them participate more effectively in their learning, right? Help them participate a little bit more during their classes, right? And so what we are thinking about is just more continuity and being a little bit more proactive, not only for our most vulnerable students in programs, but also for students in classes that are working in supported classes. I think often we think about our programs that serve our most vulnerable students, and I do think we've been successful in those areas. But I'll give you one example is language-based programming. I think we're very effective at elementary, but as those numbers expand and contract, we need to be able to adapt to keep students in district and to make sure that they're making effective progress. At middle school, we need more continuity, especially when, and this was highlighted last year in our student services survey, is this idea when students transition and they're receiving services, especially language-based services, at elementary school, they need to be able to transition to the middle school, and we need to be able to continue those services, and adapt to the new environment of middle school, right? I think we've backfilled those services, but I think we need more kind of programming in that area, so that there's more continuity grade to grade. So that's just two concrete examples. I could go on and on, but I want to be respectful of people's time.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. That's really helpful. And so if my colleagues will just indulge me, one more question. So about focused on the science educators that we're budgeting for at the elementary school level. And I was remembering in my last year or two, my last term in the school committee, we identified as a school system through assessment and a lot of other data that science education was one of our it was one of our weaker pillars in our curriculum. We hired a science cross-grade curriculum coordinator. That was a significant investment. So is it safe to say that these science educators at the elementary level, which you've identified for this coming year and the following year, are part of a long-term plan to improve science education for the system?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, great,
You're certainly welcome, Greg. Tom? Sorry, I'm so loud here.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. So I guess first let me thank the superintendent and the business administrator for shepherding this work. This has been a work I know that began months ago, and began with something important I think the community should be aware of, as well as we appreciate and sort of dig into this between now and the public hearing, that this initiated, right, with 3 different types of scenarios in play, because starting in the budget process back in the fall, we had so much less information than we have now. I mean, we're still, waiting to get more guidance from the state. We get dribs and drabs of it, then we get, directives about returning to school and so forth. So there's still a lot of moving parts here. That I think that the work that you've been able to do to bring us to this point tonight is really top notch. And I thank and congratulate you for that. One of the things that I know, having the benefit of being on the finance subcommittee and really working with the administration, on a biweekly basis since that time, we're at a little advantage. One thing I would ask, if you could just share a couple examples, Doug or Christine, whoever, or Kara, whoever may be appropriate. If any member of the community happens to, download the budget booklet that Christine is going to be putting on the website, or if anyone swings by the office and picks up a hard copy, they're going to notice that a big chunk of the budget book in the middle, specifically pages 25 to 36, 11 pages of the budget book are requests. The budget process, which is long-standing as really a hallmark of good education planning, speaks to principals and building administrators and teachers and contributors, providing a guidance to the superintendent, or providing requests from what they think are going to make for advancement in teaching and learning in the next year, right? And then that's complemented by the surveys and everything that you went over tonight. The reason why I'm bringing this up is that on those 11 pages of requests, there's any number of things that are left sort of, on the cutting room floor, that even though they are good suggestions by principals and others, they're just things that the administration and the finance subcommittee unfortunately sees can't be fit into the priorities of this year, whether they be capacity to stay within understandable limits, or the types of other priorities that in the district may take precedent. And specifically looking at that book, it appears that there's close to $250,000 of requests that are going unfunded in FY22. And certainly that's understandable and that's reasonable, but these are things that our professional educators have brought forward for us to consider, and where we need to be, thoughtful that we're leaving them unfunded for reasons understandable, but by the same token, they have asked for additional supports to the tune of almost $250,000. So if you could, whether it's Doug or Christine or Kara, whoever, could you just speak to a couple of the items that that your senior leadership team brought forward that aren't being included in your budget presentation tonight?
Sure, absolutely. So part of the beauty of the budget process is that we get to talk to all stakeholders. And I think it was early December, which seems so long ago now, we met with the principals, department heads, and we asked them, what do you have? What's working, what's not working, and what are your requests for next year? So some of those requests were additional supports, additional paraeducators, additional guidance counselors, additional adjustment counselors, reading supports. I know at the district level, we talked about humanities coordinators. We talked about potentially help desk for the growing demands on the IT department. But unfortunately, if we could fund everything, we would. But of course we can't, and we have to prioritize for this year. But I think what Doug was speaking to is this, we're not just looking for this year, we're also looking for 23. So we were thoughtful about this. The administrative team met and we had to prioritize what was needed. And I think, Tom, you'll know this because of the subcommittee, it was top priority to bring back the 5 positions #1. So those were requests from last year and they were requests for this year. So we absolutely had to address those, and along with the COVID-related positions. I don't know, do you want me to go into more detail than that?
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Christine. I wanted sort of to appreciate, I'm reading the budget book as you intended it to be written, as well as, frankly, for those that may pick it up and wonder what this big chunk of 11 pages in the middle, looks like. So those 11 pages in the middle are things that have been requested, some of which were funded, some of which weren't. The 20 pages, the last 20 pages are the actual budget requests, department or building by building and program by program. One of the things that I wanted to also see if you could comment on, and that was about enrollment. I know at the last Finance Committee meeting, we had a substantive conversation around enrollment and projections and what some of the concerns are. And I think it's important to know that remains a moving target, even with the budget presentation that you're making tonight, because enrollments are still a question mark in some ways, and also being able to tie enrollments to Chapter 70 increases. I agree. Doug, you mentioned we'll get 100,000, 101,000 increase in Chapter 70. That may or may not fluctuate wherever we land with enrollment the following year. So enrollment continues to drive lots of our funding expectations. So I was wondering if you could comment on some of that. How are we looking with regard to balancing out enrollment? How are we looking with kindergarten enrollments and so forth?
So we're currently going through kindergarten registration right now. The enrollment page on the budget book, you'll see it's a slight decline from last year. We have lost some students. We know we've lost them to private schools. We've lost them to homeschooling. But the Chapter 70 money that you referred to, that's based on October 1 data. And the October 1 data was slightly higher than the projected enrollment that we put in the book. We put what we knew in February. We wanted to put what we know now and what we're projecting for next year. So we are projecting a slight increase for 22 from 21, but it is still slightly down. The Chapter 70 from the governor's budget is based on the first year of the SOA, the Student Opportunity Act. And so it was supposed to be 1 over 7 years of funding to bring districts up to the funding levels to meet the needs of all students. So because of the pandemic, that didn't start in 21. So it's the governor is trying to start that, is making a commitment to start it in 22. And you'll see that's why Chapter 70 is slightly increasing in 22 from 21. However, for us, because our enrollment numbers are down, it's not the impact that the SOA would have had if our enrollment numbers were continuing to go up.
Right.
You also highlight a trend that's happening throughout the state. We know that the numbers for all school systems are down depending on the community. There's a kind of a delta or a change in enrollment anywhere from 3 to 11%, depending on the community that you serve. And so our enrollment is down. We're down by about 90 students. And so, you know, we're pretty confident that our numbers are going to bounce back quickly. And I know that you asked the question in two parts. You asked the question first in regard to what does our K enrollments look like, or that's part two. But part one is, you know, that our funding formulas are based on our enrollment. So the numbers that the state is working with is, as enrollment is depressed, the numbers that the state is working with is also depressed. And so that's something that we are actively working with MASS, Mary Burke at MASS. She's going to be testifying at the State House to talk about this and to talk about remedies to address this statewide, and really to build in a correction, because we know our numbers are going to bounce back in the fall, like they are in all districts. But MASS, the Mass Association of School Superintendents, is trying to proactively work with our legislators to say, let's not wait until October for our numbers to bounce back, so in our October 1 data, but let's work now and build in a correction, even if it's a smaller correction, and we can adjust it again. Let's do it in 2 increments, because it will provide more funding. So it would be a slight increase for Wakefield, but every increase is monies that we can put to good use.
Oh, I couldn't agree with that more, and thanks for bringing us to that point, Doug. I'm really thrilled to hear that that MASS and your colleagues are working toward the possibility of an enrollment adjustment, or at least a reporting adjustment. That if we remain in this gap, but not just Wakefield, but as you said, around the state, we remain in an enrollment gap. It's going to be either very costly once we catch up, or the state's not going to let us catch up money-wise, and it'll be money that'll need to be forfeited. So I'm glad to hear that's happening outside. Thank you, Doug. And again, just congratulations to the team for putting this together. I look forward to looking through it and to the public hearing next week.
Thanks, you, Tom.
Christine, can I just confirm, we're assuming at this point in time, I know it's at the point in time, that our enrollment will go up by 65 children? Am I doing the math correctly?
Yes.
3393 versus 332. Okay, just want to make sure I was pulling the right figure. Thank you.
It's a projection.
Yeah, absolutely, completely understand.
So I actually want to weigh in on what Mike just asked, because this chart is confusing, right? Particularly in the conversation that we're having. So in this current school year, we lost kids. Kids left for homeschooling and private schools. This chart shows our numbers at a particular point in time and what we expect our numbers to be next year. In our subcommittee meeting, we had some good conversation about what's going on at the elementary school level, because the other thing that happened this year is you had move-ins that came into schools, right? And so I feel like we're kind of saying that our numbers are going up, our numbers are going down, our numbers are going up, right? Like they are kind of moving around, and I think so anybody who looks at this chart may be confused, because this chart says we're going up by 65. And indeed, we did see enrollment increases mid-year that really you see at the elementary level when you really take a good look at this. And I think, and it's happened during the year. We expect those kids to move up a grade. We expect kids to come back in, and that's where you think that 65 person increase will come from. And because we don't know exactly which kids are coming back, you really don't have a good handle on the number. But overall, we think that number is going to be larger next year.
Trends are showing that way.
Yes.
But that's the problem of showing a snapshot in time, right?
Right.
Here it is February, and this is what it looks like, but right.
Yeah, okay.
Especially this year, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee for Kara, Doug, or Christine? I don't see Colleen, but.
So there aren't names of everyone on your images. There we go. And so, Olga, I believe you had a question, but in regard to the public comment section, I think that has passed. So if you have a question, could you please email us? Is that possible?
Sure.
That would be great.
And next Thursday is the public participation.
Oh, yeah. Say that again, Christine?
Public hearing is next Thursday.
And I don't know if you heard that, Olga. Next Thursday is public participation, and there'll be opportunities if you'd like to come back and speak to the larger committee and to the community. In addition to sending an email, you could do that as well, or in lieu of, if you prefer.
7 or 7:30.
Thank you.
Public hearing is 6.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, there you are, Colleen. Any other questions, comments from the committee? Okay.
Great job. Very thorough, very well done. And Christine spent a long hour with me today, so I appreciate her explaining it to me. So I'm much better informed now. Thank you.
You're certainly welcome. Next up, I'd like to turn it over to Tom Bankert to talk a little bit about extracurricular activities.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for inviting me back. It's good to be here. I will be speaking about the extracurricular performing arts options that are happening now as we get into the second half of the year, into the spring. I'd like to start with the high school theater department. Last week, we started virtual rehearsals for the second play of the year. The play is titled Admissions by Joshua Harmon, and it's a play about the many sides of the college application process. So it's pretty relevant for a lot of these students that are in the production. Will Carbon-Yaris has also done a great job of setting up workshops for students to attend, virtual workshops. You know, Doug talks about the pros of the pandemic. I don't know if I want to say pros of the pandemic, but one of the side effects of the pandemic from a theater perspective is that we've had a lot more opportunities to Zoom in with Broadway actors and actresses, producers, directors, like all the options that Will's been able to provide for these kids, and really giving them some hands-on experiences with these people in the Zoom setting. So, you know, and most recently, students attended a virtual workshop of an upcoming musical called The Circle of Becoming, starring Dina Menzel. So that's a great experience for those kids to meet her and see her and talk about her process. So we're also working on more masterclasses, virtual masterclasses for the spring, and hopefully, if we can start to open up a little bit, getting some of those in person as well here in Wakefield. And then finally, now that the state released their big guidance today, but last week they released a set of more under the radar guidance, but was actually really significant to music departments across the state. Starting last week, the state is now allowing singing to occur inside of buildings, of school buildings. Up until now, there was no singing allowed inside of the schools in the state. So with proper protocols and 10 feet of distance between students, we are now allowed to sing in schools. So we are now, with that, starting to look at the possibilities of a spring performance, a version of a musical, to see what we have time for and what the interest is like and what we can do with the spaces that we have as we move forward. So these new guidelines, you'll hear throughout that they've been very helpful now as we start to get ready to move into the end of the school year. We are beginning the winter percussion and winter color guard seasons at the beginning of April. We're going to run a 6-week program for our 7th through 12th graders. Usually this is a program that we run in the end of November through the middle of March, but the competition season obviously was canceled, and with all the groups trying to get into the field house and the upper gym at the high school, I decided to kind of back off and let things settle a little bit, let COVID settle a little bit, and then wait to get some more spaces. So we're ready to start now. So we'll be starting that in the beginning of April for our percussion students and for any students grade 7 through 12 that are interested in performing with the Winter Guard, and then hopefully continuing on to the fall for the color guard there. Our high school a cappella groups, Voices of Steel and She Major, have continued to meet. They've met virtually all year. They've produced some recordings virtually. And now with the new guidelines, again, we're hoping we can get them live and singing together in the spring for those two groups of high school a cappella students. Going down to the middle school, so there's a lot happening, which is great. Our middle school band director, our 8th grade band director, Michael Morrell, as well as Galvin Middle School principal Adam Colantoni, and I are looking at ways to get our 8th graders playing in band again. As I've talked about when I've been on before, with the new schedule at the middle school for it to work this year, the performing ensembles, band, chorus, orchestra took a real backseat in the schedule. They meet virtually during teen time once a week. They haven't met in person all year. So now that, again, things are starting to get a little bit more safe, we're starting to have a better sense of what we can do. Mr. Colantoni's been very, very supportive in getting these 8th graders, starting with 8th graders, getting them playing together again, singing together again. So we're working at getting that happening after school, hopefully starting in April. But that's at the top, at the front burner right now, which is great. And then finally, to go off of that slide that Doug showed, seeing that slide makes me miss normalcy. But I'm beginning to plan for a normal fall marching band season. And so with my, we're so happy to be doing that. I'm meeting with kids, staff, and student leadership. So stay tuned for the normal summer and fall sounds of the brass players and the metronome and the drum line playing up at Landrigan. We're ready to go. We're hoping that, when that happens, that can be kind of that first 2 feet in, get ready to get us back to normal. But we are definitely planning for that to happen, starting with end of spring, end of June rehearsals and into the summer. So that is my performing arts extracurricular update. Again, we're doing the best we can, always with the idea of safety first, making sure our kids are safe and that we're not becoming any kind of spreader of the virus, which we've done a very good job of doing all year. We haven't had any issues with any of our activities, knock on wood, and we're going to continue to put safety first, but also provide opportunities for our kids. I know they miss them, parents miss them, the community misses the performances. So we're doing the best we can, and we're going to continue to add more as we can in a safe way. So that's what I got. Thank you for the time. Any questions? Obviously, I'll answer them.
Well, thank you so much, Tom. Sounds great. We're all thrilled for you. Yes, Greg.
Thanks, Amy. I just really wanted to say thank you to Tom and the music and theater and arts educators. It's so important to provide these opportunities for kids. It's so central to so many of their educational experiences, and like so many other things, it's been taken away from so many of them this year. And I just really commend the teachers for working so hard to make this work, and to think about students singing together and playing together again in the spring is just really inspiring. And I know that when the community hears that and sees that, it'll be a sign, another sign that we've come through this as a community. And I know I really look forward to it. So thank you, Tom.
I look forward to it too. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
Any other questions for Tom? Nope, seeing none. So thank you again so much for all that informative information, and we all are very excited to see that program continue on.
Thank you. I'm glad I could provide informative information for you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Always.
Thank you, Tom. We'll have to put something else on the agenda to get you here on the 23rd, but it's always great to hear the work that you're doing. So Kara and I would like to kind of talk a little bit about student learning time and kind of what the work that we've been doing, but also kind of the new information that we're learning and hearing from the state. And so I don't know if you'd like to start, Kara?
Sure. Yep. So we thought it was important tonight just to touch upon where we are as a district, given the board meeting from Friday, Department of Ed, as well as the guidance that was released this afternoon. So Doug and I thought it was important to just go at a pace where we have all of the information we need before talking publicly about this or putting any communication out. So we felt like today was a good day for us to have a couple of touch points across the district. We had in our meetings with administration, we had our staff check-in, we had a meeting with the WEA board, and then we're here with all of you tonight. So we felt like it was a good day of communication across the district. So this slide, do you want me to speak to this slide, Doug, or do you want to take this one?
I can start.
Okay.
So the week before last, on February 23rd, there was a press conference, and the Commissioner of Education announced on the same timeline that you all heard it, we heard it for the first time too, which was exciting, that he announced that all schools at the elementary level, starting at the elementary, would be coming back full-time on April 5th, right? And to do that, what he was going to do is he's going to work with his board, and what they would be working to do, he would propose to his board that the board give him permission to amend student learning time policy and regulations. And the adjustment that has been made in this past year with the pandemic with student learning time is that the state has made an adjustment due to the pandemic and the emergency to give schools credit for time on learning, for remote plans and for hybrid plans. Now, the challenging part for us and for all superintendents and districts is that to start the year, everything was kind of pushed back to school committees and to administrative teams, and all decisions were local, right? And so, and what that has gotten us is that, we're in a hybrid plan. We've been in school since October. We're in school. We have students in school every day in a hybrid plan. So students are in school learning in person for some portion of the week, right? And those are schedules that we've created collaboratively with our school committee and with the leadership of the Wakefield Education Association. But I make note of this idea that all plans and this information was developed locally, but what we've got is, as a starting point, is our hybrid plan is a little different than Reading's hybrid plan, is a little different than Burlington's hybrid plan, is a little different than Melrose's hybrid plan, right? And so essentially the concept is the same. To maintain a social distance, schools, administrators, and teachers have worked collaboratively to get students, to split students actually in half. And so some districts have created 1 week on, 1 week off. Some districts have created 2 days in, 3 days out, or what we call a 2-1-2. And some districts have created kind of a split day instead of a split week or a split, when I say split week, split days in the week or every other week. And so the concept is all the same. We're reducing class sizes to kind of allow for social distancing and safety and mitigation strategies. And so, but with everyone in a different place, and this big announcement on the 23rd, that everyone is now going to pivot and all be prepared to get all students back at the same time, has presented a little bit of a challenge, right? And so because everyone is starting in a different place, right? So that announcement meant something different to Wakefield than it did to Melrose, than it did certainly to Boston, right? A lot of our urban centers have not had students back in school at all. And so we feel like we have been back. And on a call earlier today, one of our teachers said, it's unfortunate, it doesn't feel like we're getting credit for all of the good work that we've done. And so, and it was a positive comment, and I think it speaks to the relationships that we have and we've developed in doing this work. But in terms of where we are now and looking ahead, the board the board is recommending or giving the commissioner the authority to shift away from hybrid models. And the slide that you're seeing, if you can see it on your screens, this is a new slide deck. So we've moved away from our budget slides. This is a new slide deck. So this slide actually came from the state, and it talks about reopening or return to full in-person school 5 days per week. And the goal is for elementary schools to return K-5. Most elementary schools are in a K-5 model. For districts like us, where 5th grade is part of the middle school, really the focus at elementary will be K-4, and grade 5 will be included in the middle school kind of phase 2. So we are going to be working with our administrative teams, with the union leadership, and with our teacher leaders to look at what 3 feet of social distance might allow us in terms of getting all students back into school, right? And so where it gets a little difficult is when there's not continuity in regard to the square footage that we have in our schools. For example, Galvin is a new school. All of the classrooms are 1,200 square feet. All of the classrooms are 900 square feet due to the MSBA standard. Science labs are 1,200 square feet. So there's continuity in planning. Here at the high school, where it's a building that has additions, a number of our classrooms are different sizes, right? And so in regard to planning for classes and getting more students into the building, some of our classrooms are 600 square feet, some are 400 square feet, some are 900 square feet or more. So, but that kind of affects our plans. But kind of the next steps for us in Wakefield are going to be for elementary.
Well, we just said, I don't know if we want to reference our phases again. I think we were just trying to look here on the slide deck to do a comparison of, looking at the phases from DESE and then just going back to just kind of see the review of Wakefield's phases. We've operated in different phases since our reopening team process started last summer. And I won't go back, but each phase, we've had an eye on planning for the next phase as we've hit it. And we've been in phase 3 for some time now, while refining our hybrid schedules where we can across the district. But with thinking about elementary, that K-4 timeline for April 5th, prior to the release of information from Friday and the guidance from today, we had been planning for that, what we're calling like our phase 4. So you can see it on here. We had been talking about getting our elementary students in 5 days a week, which for us, the way that we built our elementary schedule, what was important to us was as many touch points as possible for our elementary students. And so that meant that, since September, since we started our hybrid model, we've been able to get our elementary students in 4 days a week, with our Wednesdays we know have not been ideal on the parent side of things, but have on the parent side of things because of the limited direct time. But on the teacher collaboration side of things, we've had really beneficial time to thoughtfully plan out our curriculum for this year and to think about what we need to prioritize. But as things have gotten, we've seen improved data and we've seen things moving along at the state level. We had been already planning to get our 5th day at elementary in, but on the half-day model. So that was put in front of, we've been working with the WEA board on that. That was put in front of our elementary teachers last week, and that, was voted on and I believe, pretty successfully received. But all that then, changes with the guidance today, which we were waiting to hear about in terms of what does that entail when we say 5 days a week full time, and they dug into that a little bit more today with the guidance, so which prompted us to create a new phase 4 revised version, which will be the work that we have in front of us, which I just think it's important for us to make clear that we're not starting this work from scratch. We didn't hear the guidance, the board meeting results on Friday and the guidance today and have to start from scratch. A lot of this has been in the works. We've been working with our elementary principals, teacher leaders, instructional leaders, our facilities director, Christine, just across the board to try to do as much proactive chipping away as possible, because it was always in our mind to get to this phase 4 of a full return, and we've tried to have every phase before that set us up to be in a nice position. So I won't go through all those, but I just thought it was important to reference those. And so we just thought we would just map through some of the considerations for moving forward.
Sure. So our next step is to kind of get what we're calling actual numbers, to survey parents and to just really look at, because when parents are starting to hear, so the commissioner led with the outcome before he actually developed a plan, right? So he announced the outcome on the 23rd of February, and just today they kind of released the guidance or the plan on how we would do that, right? And so there's a little bit of a gap there. And so what we're doing as a next step in terms of prioritizing this work at elementary and working to get students back, we're going to survey parents just to kind of to check in to hear if your child has an opportunity to return to school, would you return if we had changed the social distance from 6 feet to 3 feet? What does that mean for you, right? And so we did hear, and as part of the guidance, students that are in a remote plan whose parents have opted into a remote plan from the beginning of the year can remain in a remote plan, right? So that's positive because that creates some stability for students that are in that space. But as we get actual numbers, then what we're going to do is start laying out classrooms and actually measuring with the new guidance that we have and really figure out how many students that we can get into classrooms and get into buildings, right? Our goal is to get everybody back into school and to do everything that we possibly can to meet the expectation of April getting everybody back at elementary as a starting point.
And just some more, just continuing to think about the instructional spaces. I think, like we said, the cohort model that we have set up at elementary, the merging of the cohorts is the biggest consideration to getting to that full-time status. And I think, we've talked a lot about what we want to prioritize and how that can look. And, we've talked about different furniture needs at different levels and been proactive in that. So I think we're going to have what we need. It's really just a matter of thinking about that distance piece, like Doug said, and we operated on a 6-foot distance since the summer, and the guidance today really goes in greater detail about at least 3 feet distance, and even so much as seat edge to seat edge. And so it's really just like thinking about we did the measurement exercises in the summer last year, but right now I think we're in a position where we know more. We know more than we did at that point. And so it's just going to be a matter of continuing to assess that. And I think, in talking to administration this morning, just really trying to be thoughtful about not sacrificing the high quality instruction that our elementary teachers have been able to deliver through the course of the year. That has been, that was at the forefront of our planning last summer, and just really thinking about keeping cohorts together with their classroom teacher is important to us, to make sure that as we bring our elementary students back, that the important aspects of an elementary learner are consistency, routine, familiarity, just that we can keep those things intact. So that's going to be just at the forefront of our planning. And then I think we've all been hopeful with the release that our teachers can be a priority group for vaccinations. That is going to continue to be very important for us to in this planning work. I think we've talked about our I think we do a really successful collaboration with our WEA board and unit members, just trying, all of this is possible because of the relationships and the collaboration that has been ongoing since last summer. And we don't talk about the fact that our reopening process didn't end when we got students back in the hybrid. We meet every week with our administrators at every level, our instructional leaders, our board, just to continue thinking about what's next and being prepared for that. I don't know if you want to talk about the schedule. Or...
Sure. So in terms of the schedules, anytime we're increasing the density of students, if we're decreasing the social and physical distance between students, and we're increasing the density and the number of students in a building, right? There's always this risk that you can kind of create the kind of the environment where the transmission of the virus can occur. So we've had very low transmission rates to low to zero transmission rates during our contact tracing so far in our schools, based on the number of positive cases that we've had, which again is a very good thing, right? But now we're entering, so at one of our teachers, one of the WA leaders, Rick Manzi, described this as, Doug, this is like reopening all over again. He's absolutely correct, right? So what we have are norms and routines in classes and groups that are operating really well with class sizes, very small class sizes. So now when you take groups that are running really well and you kind of take them and double the size of the group, it's going to create some kind of differences that we're going to need to work through. One of the things that we're going to need to work through are kind of the specialist schedules. We're going to have to work through lunch schedules, because during lunch, masks come off. And when masks come off, that really creates some questions in regard to maintaining physical distance, safe protocols. And the other question is, so our old schedules for lunches, where we had, students sitting 6 inches from one another, are really, those schedules we can't go back to. So we're going to work at creating new schedules and creating it different ways that we're going to need to be able to offer lunch to our students. So the other parts of this is that it affects transportation, it affects special education services and meetings that have been scheduled for months. So there's a lot of things that need to change. There's a lot of layers to this, as we like to say. And I know some parents have reached out to us and they've asked, are we going to work to get back? We first of all, we are back, and we're going to work to get all students to merge the cohorts. We're going to do everything that we can do to merge the cohorts and get back in April, okay? And we'll have a more comprehensive update in our next school committee meeting. It might be every school committee meeting from now until the end of the year. But one of the things that we're trying to just kind of work on is supporting one another and letting everybody know we're going to get there. We're going to get there. We're all kind of doing the best we can, but there are a number of things that we have to take into consideration beyond individual singular students and family cases. We serve 3,400, almost 3,500 students and families that all have different needs and are all coming at this from a different place. And so we're going to get there. Our goals are the same, and we want to get students back, and our plan is to get them back in April. We're going to be putting out some information tomorrow on this to parents that might have been unable to make this meeting or to hear about it. And so there'll be more information forthcoming from us in print, and there'll be more information reported on our Thursday afternoon Zoom call that's open to the community, as well as there'll be more information at our next school committee meeting. So if anyone watching has questions for myself or for Kara, we would urge you to reach out to us.
Yeah, I think that, we just wanted to just provide an update on the planning that we're doing, the things that we're thinking about, the timeline for elementary. Even though the high school timeline from the state is TBD, we're still planning, and we're planning as a district in terms of this return, and so that is in the works as well. So I think that we fit on everything. Our full remote option, like we said earlier in the meeting, will continue to be an option for parents. We've had some parents reach out with that concern that has been successful for their family this year, and we have reassured them that will continue through the end of the school year if they choose. However, if parents in the remote program now choose to return, they'll have that option as well. So I think, Doug's right, the survey information is going to be really critical for us just to know exactly what the numbers are that we're working with at each grade level. But we can take any questions if there are any.
Does anyone have any questions for, yes, Greg? Sorry, Susie.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for this update. It's so many moving parts and so complicated, and just appreciate all the hard work that you're all putting into this. You know, as difficult as this is, I'm actually really glad to hear, and as clumsy as the rollout was at the state level, I think, you know, I think most of us on the school committee and in the community can say, with confidence that we share the goal of trying to get kids back in the classrooms as quickly as possible. I think sometimes we don't talk enough about what's being lost with remote learning, what's being lost by the absence of the in-school experience, the social and emotional toll that that's taking on students and families and teachers. So I just wanted to emphasize that, and just to super clarify this and confirm. So the goal, Doug and Kara, is our intention is to meet the state's mandate to have that 5 hours for five hours, I believe it is, 5 days a week, elementary school in-person learning by April 5th, correct?
That's our goal, correct.
Great, okay, thank you.
Susie.
So I have about 20 minutes of thoughts that I could make on this, but I will try not to. So first of all, Greg, I completely agree. I think we all want to get kids back, right? I want it, all of my friends want it, we all talk about it, our kids need it. But I will say that at our last meeting, when the state had kind of declared that we all needed to be back, in April, my comment was, you can't make a declaration like that and deprioritize teachers' vaccinations in the same breath. That's irresponsible. And the week later, the next week, teachers were prioritized, so they at least kind of understood that. But I would say again, what has happened on Friday and today is irresponsible, in that, and I think any of us who live in kind of a corporate world know that there's lots of people kind of high up that have these great ideas of like, we can go do this and we can make it happen, but they honestly have no idea what it takes to get something done. And we are now in that situation where we've been told we need to make this happen for the 5th, when it is a monumental set of work that has to be done being asked of a team who has already done a monumental amount of work for the last year. And it is unrealistic, it's unreasonable, it's aggravating, and you can hear it in my voice. It just irritates me that we can find ourselves in a situation, and yet we need to make this happen, right? We're gonna make it happen. But if you read that document that was put out this afternoon, you will sense the irresponsibility in it, in that they talk about you're expected to have your kids 3 feet apart, but at lunch, and you're expected to be there full day, so you've got to serve lunch, but at lunch you got to be 6 feet apart. How does that work? We don't have the space to do that. Well, then go get tents, or find other buildings in the town that you can use. Like, what? So I know people are so anxious to get their kids back in school, but I think we will figure it out. But I ask people to understand that what we have been asked to do, we have been set up to not fail, because we won't, but we have been set up, and it is wrong on 100 levels. I think we could have gotten kids back. We know we were all working towards that, right? That was the goal you guys were working towards. It would have happened, but to force it in this kind of time frame with a waiver that will never get accepted, right? There's a chance of waivers. Wakefield's not going to get a waiver. And so I just need people to understand and take a step back from the emotion of wanting their children back in school, because we all want it, to understand this will be a monumental effort, and just try to take a deep breath when you're thinking about kind of the demands that you're making. And like I said, we will make it happen. But please understand it's going to be difficult. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Susie. Any other comments? Yes, Darcy.
Yes, I mean, I think, yes, it's a big task, but I think we have plenty of examples of school districts who have kids back in school. So what I would encourage the district to do is to reach out to other districts and to learn, you know, I'm a little confused as to why, right, each district has to figure this out themselves when I think that there are examples, and I think that we can use other school districts who have had students in school since the beginning, you know, whether it's, and then there's other school districts who have already brought them back since Friday, right? So, you know, I think it's really important to not wait for the state to tell us exactly how to do it, you know, because that's probably not going to happen. But, you know, but I think that there are resources out there, and it's probably worth having conversations and learning from others who have done it.
Thank you, Darcy. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, I know it's going to be a huge undertaking for us. I cannot imagine the undertaking for some other school systems who are not even in the stratosphere that we're in as far as making progress. But so I don't know if there's going to be some relief once they realize this is physically impossible to get all these school districts to do this. You know, we're probably as prepared as any school district just because of everything we've done. So while that's a heavy lift, hopefully it's a lighter lift than others are going through. Not sure that really gives us a great deal of comfort, but we'll get there. We will find a way. We always have, so I'm sure we will again. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I can't agree more. You know, it's certainly an overwhelming task to look at the big picture, right? But like Doug said, there are so many layers, you know, to this process. So you've got to start at step one, which is getting those surveys out and getting the data and the information back from parents to see who exactly is going to need to come back at the, you know, elementary level. Take that information, use that data, and then plan. And I have all the faith in Superintendent Lyons and Assistant Superintendent Morrow, you know, to actually, you know, do the task, complete it, and ensure that the kids aren't back in school on the date that Desi has assigned to Wakefield. No doubt, it's going to be a lot of work, but, you know, we've been through a lot already, and I think it's a doable thing. It's just certainly very overwhelming, and, you know, I would agree if parents can just, you know, send any questions or comments to them in any concerns or issues as well, because we're all in this together and we all want the same thing. And, you know, I have faith in Wakefield Public, and it will certainly happen. Just one day at a time here, and let them do the work, and they'll do it. Any other questions or comments for Superintendent Lyons? Okay, thank you. So, are you all set?
So, thank you.
Great. Moving on with the agenda, some subcommittee reports for finance. Like Christine said, we were provided our official budget booklets at the meeting last Thursday we met. We didn't have any specific questions in regards to the budget booklet because we had just been given it the day before. But we did have some general discussions about the overall budget, and like Tom mentioned, we had some robust conversations about enrollment for next year as well. And Bob Shirley gave us a brief update about facilities. And I also just want to note that Gerard Lehman from the FinCom has been attending our meetings for probably 2 months now. So it's usually part of the budget planning to collaborate with members of the FinCom subcommittee, which I think has been, you know, very valuable, and it's been a great collaboration. So we do have another meeting Thursday in anticipation for the presentation that Christine and Doug will provide to FinCom on Thursday evening via Zoom. I'm not sure the exact time of that.
I think it's 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. So that's it for finance. Moving on to labor, Tom.
Yeah, hi, thank you, Amy. So what we've been discussing at Labor, I would have obviously speak to now, but figured instead of chiming in, moments ago, when Doug and Kara were talking and other members, it would probably be most appropriate to leave these remarks under labor relations, because the bulk of the work that we've been doing is really supporting this effort, the back to school effort as well. Just really to, I guess, for us to complement and highlight what Doug and Kara's presentation, that they have been, and I think it's more than fair to say, they've been working and presenting and using the Labor Relations Subcommittee as a sounding board for many of the scenarios that have been discussed and presented tonight for literally months. This is not, Doug and his team are not picking up the ball as of last Friday when the commissioner made his announcement and the governor's announcement last Thursday. So I think it's more than fair to say that that this team, it is a priority of the district administration as well as the school committee to get kids back, and it has been for some time. One of the things that I think, as we see in the outcome of the work tonight regarding the budget, as I mentioned earlier, there were 3 scenarios in play. All of those 3 scenarios were really driven by COVID, expectations or COVID planning, and needing to land in a place that is most fair and reasonable, not just from a budget perspective, but working with labor relations and making sure that, in addition to wanting kids back in school, we needed to make sure that we were providing appropriate, safe, and welcoming spaces to our teachers and faculty. So that's an important piece. A couple of the things that we talked about at our last labor relations meeting, which was, we had one this morning, we had one last week as well. And as I said, the biggest priority that we shared is certainly getting kids back to school. And what does that look like with an eye on safety and an eye on educational quality? Those 2 things have to go hand in hand. Not one, frankly, in this environment is more important than the other. So one of the things that we talked about in particular, as was mentioned earlier, but I think I wanted to highlight some of the things that maybe that the school committee members shared at Labor Relations. Number one was a deep appreciation that trying to get every district, every town, every city and town back to school for April 5 seems arbitrary and seems unreasonable. I couldn't agree more with Susie's comments earlier, using the word irresponsible. And one of the words that was used this morning was not only arbitrary, but was reckless. That the type of things in planning, you want to do a legitimate planning process that drives safety and educational soundness. You don't just throw a date against a dartboard and say, oh, let's drive everyone there. So that's one of the things that we were most concerned about. Even though the superintendent, the assistant superintendent have been working literally for months around different options and different plans. The other thing that is concerning is that every district, we talk about it among ourselves, and we get emails from our neighbors and folks around town asking, well, how come Linfield could do this, or Stoneham could do that, or Melrose could do that, and necessarily we can't. Well, first of all, sure we can, and we certainly need to put Wakefield's spin on our ability to get back in place. But something important and critically important to note is that each community starts at a different place. Not every community last September did what we did. Everyone had the ability to drive their own community's reopening schedule based on what is best needed for schools, kids, and teachers in each town. So each town's different. And that's part of the arbitrariness of trying to now all of a sudden bring everyone together and to say, well, everyone should be the same. even if you look at just the towns that I rattled off, not to pick on our friends to the northeast in Linfield is well less than half our size. So even to compare Wakefield's ability to get back in the same mode as Linfield just isn't fair just on the numbers. But regardless, so we talked about that. You know, one of the best things that I think that came out of decisions that the Governor Baker and Commissioner made last summer, and we talked about this as well, was that they left these decisions last fall up to local control, with an appreciation that local superintendents, local town administrators, local school committees are best able and best suited to make decisions about how to get their schools back in play. The state, understandably, you know, put in some guidelines with regard to safety expectations, huge guidelines with regard to safety expectations, and then educational standards. And we drove conversations, planning, and really the development of a series of productive MOUs with our teacher leaders to bring us in a good place, all driven by local control. Now here we are, whatever, 9 months, 10 months later, and the state's saying just the opposite. So that was frustrating to us as we shared that with, that all, you know, now all of a sudden the state's saying, no, this is what you all have to do. The state's now coming in with its authority, saying the local control thing from last year, well, that doesn't hold anymore. You now need to all get on the same page, and you've got a month to do it. You make an announcement on March 5th, and you give everyone 30 days to do this. Is again, I hear my colleague Susie ringing in my ear, is irresponsible and reckless. So we shared some of those thoughts and concerns. One of the other things is how much are we actually prepared to compromise? I know one of the just listened moments ago, and as Kara rattled off a variety of concerns outside of the classroom, but inside of the school building that need to be considered and adhered to. And you know, school lunches. Susie spoke about that as well. Busing, library, transportation, common spaces, special education, athletics, extracurricular activities, and so on and so forth. The school district with over 3,000 students isn't going to reassemble itself in the same way as some of our neighbors with different numbers and sizes and profiles. Anyways, and another thing that's of concern, and Doug mentioned this very briefly, but we talked about it at some length this morning as well, is how's MCAS going to roll itself out? You know, kids have not had the same type of classroom experience all year, yet you know, the state still has a laser focus on the standardized test bit. So we need to make a real assessment in educational judgment on how that's going to play itself out. As Doug mentioned earlier, the state did give a reprieve bit of about a month. Testing won't be occurring in April; it'll be occurring more in May and June. But then, you know, that may even be more complicated with regard to student capacity to take those tests in a qualified or in a dignified way. So anyways, these are all the types of things that Labor Relations has been percolating on and working with the administration on for the last couple of meetings and the last couple of months, really. But let me just conclude by saying almost where we started in a report given, I think 2 meetings ago, when we recommended that we also chime in with other school committees and with superintendents of the North Shore and advocating for teachers to receive their teachers to get higher up on the list of vaccinations. And we're obviously very pleased. We discussed that at some length. Very pleased to see that last week the governor did exactly that. We want to make sure that safety piece is given enough space to be able to happen and to be able to have people return in a safe way. And I guess finally, just to continue to thank our partners in education, our teaching and faculty, and really everyone really every employee that makes this school district hum has been put to the test this year, and pushed in some ways to not quite the brink, but certainly pushed to the test of challenging their creative energies. And I think I know that's also one of the things that Labor Relations Subcommittee wants to share as a big thank you to the WEA and the union leadership, but to every faculty member, every staff and faculty member who helped make this come together. And it can't be understated. So I think, our conclusion this morning and when we last met, this is sort of a take, a little bit of an aside take from the types of more straight-on issues that Doug and Kara shared. But we certainly need to be advocates on our own and continue to do everything we can to get students and teachers back as soon as possible, but with an eye on health and safety and educational sound practice. So certainly more to follow there, that's for sure. But we've had some very robust discussions in the last couple of months, and I always, again, congratulate and thank the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and the team of principals and others for helping with lots of creative energy and lots of creative thinking to bring us to this place. Thank you.
Okay, Student Services, Darcy.
Yes, so we had our meeting and where Doug shared the data from the surveys that he just summarized in the budget presentation. So that was primarily what we spent our time focused on, and then he summarized for today, and then we have another meeting scheduled on March 24th that's our next meeting. So.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Where am I? Policy and Communications, Colleen.
Hi, thank you, Amy. So we met last Friday, and actually, do we want to do the motion first? Amy, is that okay?
Sure, yes.
Did everyone have, before we make the motion, I just want to make sure that everyone had time to look them over. The protocols were just updated, in a very small way, and I can speak to that after I make the motion, but I just wanted to make sure that was okay first.
Thank you.
Okay.
Move that the school committee approve the operating norms and protocols as updated and presented by the Policy and Communications Subcommittee.
Second.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion?
So Colleen, do you want to just remind us of what was edited?
Yeah.
There was just one piece, right?
Yeah, there was. We had discussion on a few of the items, but there was just one that we actually changed in a very small way. So it's number 13, and we just included. I think it said, the superintendent or chair of the school committee. So we just included appropriate chain of command. And that would mean that we could refer our questions or concerns to possibly, you could say to a parent, you need to talk to the teacher or to the principal or to the administration. So sort of in that order. And so that was just updated in that way.
Colleen, do you want me to read it?
Sure. Thank you, Susie.
Yep, so it says, members will refer constituent concerns and complaints, including issues relating to district personnel, to the appropriate chain of command, but will keep the superintendent or the school committee chair informed. And so, yeah, it was like minor edits to the way that was originally written, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that was all.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, I did change to the current committee because we haven't done them in 2 years. So the current committee has changed and the dates.
Oh. Yeah.
Colleen, my last name is like butchered in there.
Oh.
So if we can fix that, it's not a big deal.
I double-checked that in my phone too, Susie, that day, but I will absolutely fix that.
There's a lot of I's and E's in there.
Yeah.
All of us with a lot of vowels in our last name can commiserate with you.
Thank you,
So
Susie.
minus that change. Thank you, Susie.
Yep.
That's all.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, so roll call vote. Myself, yes. Ms. Bayer?
Yes.
Mr. Markham?
Yes.
Ms. Guida?
Yes.
Mr. Boudreau?
Yes.
Dr. Burns?
Yes.
And Mr. Liakos?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So yeah, Colleen, continue.
Yeah,
on.
I just want to continue that the community should have, the school community and those community members that have signed up through the town database should have received a message communicating our panel discussion, which is on March 17th and will be hosted by WCAT. So on similar to the way that our, not the format, but similar to the way that it was communicated and shown the community forum. So that communication, I believe, went out yesterday, and I got one from the town today. So I'm hoping that everyone, received those successfully. Greg Liakos has worked really hard to coordinate and collaborate with Native American leaders that have been sort of suggested to us or referred to us by many different, not only people that we've spoken to outside of town, but also taking suggestions from community members and conversations as well. Greg, if you have any points you want to speak to that further. Okay.
No, thanks, Colleen. I just wanted to make sure everyone knows, the details. And it seems like almost all of the panelists whom we've invited have confirmed. Doug and Karen Fitzpatrick helped me get invitations out to all of them, formal invitations, so they have that. Senator Lewis, Representative Lipper Garabedian, and I hope Representative Wong will also be joining us, which would be great, add to the discussion. So very much looking forward to it. As you know, from the beginning, I've always felt that the Native voices, as well as the voices of our students, have to be paramount in this conversation. And so this is really the one chance that we'll really get to hear from them, and I think it'll be a good conversation and a good experience. And so the only other thing I was going to ask, Colleen, is, I know you had reached out to Ryan to do a planning session with him, similar to what we did before the forum, and I just want to make sure we loop Amy in on that, since Amy will be facilitating this discussion. So however you want to do that is fine. We'll make the time to make sure we're all coordinated for it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that worked really well when we were able to do that, or even just, that process has sort of been teased out, the first time. So just waiting to hear back from them on when a good day is for them. And then absolutely, Amy will include you in that. So, because you'll be facilitating that discussion.
Yes,
Great.
that'd be great. I appreciate that.
And we're meeting again on this Friday as well. And I know that I did send in my communication with WCAT, asked them, they could also join that meeting to iron out any last minute details as well. So that's all for now. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Future dates and agenda items. I just wanted to remind the public that the public budget hearing is scheduled for next Thursday, March 18th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. So if anyone from the public has any issues or concerns or questions in regards to the budget, this particular event would be the time when you could come and discuss the budget. It's a separate meeting specifically for that purpose. And our next, the Zoom information can be found on wakefieldpublicschools.org. And I also think it will be published in the daily item as well. And our next regular scheduled school committee meeting will be Tuesday, March 23rd at 7:30.
One quick question about future dates, Aim.
Yeah.
The final meeting in April is currently scheduled for the 27th, which is Election Day.
Right.
And we typically move that meeting out. I didn't know if we wanted to kind of declare that tonight and say that we're going to move our meeting to Wednesday or Thursday or what have you, but get it.
Yeah.
And maybe we need to have more of a conversation about, is there anything else scheduled
Right.
for the Wednesday or the Thursday, but
Yeah.
I do think we need to get a new date for that, because we don't typically meet on
We
that
do.
night.
Yeah, so we can
You guys will
work
look at
together
calendars.
and then have an update for the
Perfect.
23rd of March.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Yep.
School committee comments? Greg?
No additional comments. Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, Greg. Mike?
The phone-a-thon, which will actually be a mail-a-thon this year for the TSF, will be occurring on March 20th. So look for your mailbox for requests for donations. Last year, they donated $700,000 to the Wakefield High School students. I think the average was over $3,000 per child. So encourage you to participate in what is a great event and a great organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Tom?
Thank you, Amy. No additional comments tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Colleen?
I'm muted. No further comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Darcy?
No further comment either.
Thank you. Susie?
So I do have a quick update for my environmental sustainability committee liaisoning that I do, and some conversation that took place at a recent subcommittee meeting, finance subcommittee meeting, where we were talking about the impact of the styrofoam ban that was passed at town meeting last May, and that actually impacts schools. It impacts restaurants and the schools. And so we spent a decent amount of time a couple of meetings ago kind of walking through what the implications would be were the schools to attempt to meet that deadline in time for this fall. And the overwhelming feeling was that it was going to be a burden that we could not take on to kind of replace wholesale all of the things that would need to be replaced in order to be compliant by this bylaw. For restaurants, you can kind of pass that cost on to kind of, people who frequent that restaurant. But in our case, we would never want to pass on the cost to our students, because that could be a real burden for kids. And spend some time talking about just how food insecurity is a real thing in Wakefield right now. And so the idea of kind of taking on a 20 to 30 cent increase in price to cover off on the cost that it would take to be compliant just didn't feel like it was the right thing to do. And so we spent some time talking about getting a waiver, and I'm in the midst of having conversations about what are the things that we can do on this. I know that there's some discussion about potentially using some CARES Act money to help, but the reality is that Danielle Collins said even if we had all the money in the world, getting those the materials is difficult right now. I will say that Danielle was very, very clearly committed to doing what she can in the short term, which is really all that the town is going to ask for when it comes to the waiver. They're going to want an understanding of kind of what the plan is and what have we done. So we can talk about that at the next finance subcommittee meeting, but I did want to give an update on that. I do have the next ESC meeting is this Thursday, and so I'll be going back to them and having a conversation about with them. And then the only other thing I would say is next week is a busy week because we have the panel on the Native American panel Wednesday. We've got the budget forum Thursday, and there's a parent university keynote that I believe is happening Tuesday.
The 16th. Yeah,
The 16th.
correct, yeah. It's busy.
Yeah, so there's lots of great things going on that I didn't want to miss the parent university presentation because that
Thank you for
is.
bringing that up. Yeah, that's the group has been working really hard to plan that out. What they're calling the spring semester of parent university, and it's spread out over the course of the last I think it's the last 3 Tuesdays and Thursdays in March, starting with the keynote Mark Brackett on March 16th. And we've been working together to narrow down the workshops that we're going to offer from our internal people, and we're pretty close. So that should probably get promoted in the next couple of days. But yeah, March 16th, 18th, 23rd, 25th, 30th, and April 1st are the dates we're looking at to offer workshops.
And Mark Brackett's topic?
Raising emotionally resilient children, I believe was the title. Colleen, you remember what title we landed on, if that's correct? But
Emotionally intelligent, maybe?
okay, intelligent or
Yes.
resilient. I don't have it in front of me. But yeah, social emotional health, and I think Doug, you've seen Mark Brackett speak as well.
He's
and
exceptional.
yeah.
So just another thought about, just more information just about dates. So Christine and I will be presenting the budget, school committee budget, and our recommended budget to FinCom on Thursday evening on the 11th. We will also be presenting to town council on the 22nd, ahead of school committee on the 23rd, and then we'll be following up on the 25th with with FinCom as well. So March is a full calendar.
Thank you, Deb. You all set? So do we have a motion to adjourn?
We do. Did you not want to say anything?
I'm all set, yeah.
Move that the school committee adjourn its meeting of March 9th, 2021. Need a second, guys.
Second, sorry.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Myself, yes. Ms. Bayer?
Yes.
Mr. Markham?
Yes.
Ms. Guida?
Yeah.
Mr. Boudreau?
Yes.
Dr. Burns?
Yes.
Mr. Liakos?
Yes.
Well, thank you all so much. That concludes our meeting for this Tuesday, March 9th. Hope you have a great night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.